Hi everyone. Thank you, and thank you for your time for joining our webinar on cybersecurity for SAP applications on the cloud and considerations to migrate and operate SAP securely on AWS. On behalf of Novis and AWS, I welcome you to this webinar. My name is Inigo Artiagoitia, and I'm the country manager and sales director for Novis in the United States. Today, this webinar is organized jointly by Novis and AWS. And today we have two speakers, one from each organization. First, we'll have Srinath Midi. He's the Senior SAP Solutions Architect for AWS. And also we have Patricio Renner, who's the Chief Technology Officer in Novis. And we'll take a quick look on our agenda. First, we'll have Srinath to talk to us about the principles and best practices for SAP security on AWS. And then we'll have Patricio Renner to talk to us about the Novis experience implementing SAP security best practices using Novis Cloud Manager. Also, after Srinath and Patricio speaking, we will have time to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So we invite you to write your inquiries with the questions and in the questions and answers options in the menu below the webinar image. And also this webinar will be recorded and then will be available a few days after the webinar on our YouTube channel. So now I'll let Srinath introduce himself and talk to you on our first topic. Hello, Srinath.
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you, Inigo, for introductions. I want to quickly introduce myself and then start with the content that I have today. We have an exciting content. I want to thank you for taking out time and joining us today. I'm Srinath Midi. I'm a senior solutions architect at AWS. I work with my partners like Novis, and we help customers to bring their SAP workloads to AWS and be part of their cloud journey. During that journey, we instill the best practices that are recommended by both AWS and SAP. That's my primary goal and objective. I want to start my presentation today by thanking our partner Novis for being a great AWS SAP competency partner. They have delivered multiple complex SAP projects across the globe. I do want to thank them for joining me today, and then we start looking into we start looking at the security for today. So security is the key, and every organization is very much focused on security today because every day there are new threats that are coming into and interfering with your SAP workloads or any non-SAP workloads as well. So security is the key, and at AWS, security is the top priority. So the way that we approach this is like we created a model called shared responsibility model. AWS responsibility is the security of the cloud, where AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs all the services offered in the AWS cloud. This infrastructure is composed of hardware, software, networking, and the facilities, the physical facilities that run AWS cloud services. Customers' responsibility is security in the cloud. And what it means is like, depending on the services that the customer is leveraging, customer owns anything above the guest operating system, and then the data itself, it is completely owned by the customer, and customer gets to have the controls like who can access their data, who can have visibility to their EC2 compute instances or storage. All the services that they choose on AWS is the responsibility of the customer. I want to call it out that a customer may choose to work with our partner like Novis, who can help them with that responsibility and then help them in managing the security on AWS with all the best practices. I want to talk quickly on the global security and compliance that AWS global infrastructure and our services have achieved. AWS has invested in broad range of global security and compliance accreditations, including ISO and depending on region specific compliance requirements like Europe. Like if you are familiar, like if you are a customer who does business in Europe, there are stricter GDPR compliance requirements, which means like your data has to reside within that region. And also there are compliance requirements like GXP for pharma based customers. So when you use AWS infrastructure or services, we have our infrastructure and services have achieved these compliance and security certifications. So you can be assured that AWS has very high standards in maintaining the security posture for your data on AWS. We developed, I think it's about like 6-7 years ago, we released a white paper on AWS well-architected review, and then eventually we developed it as a framework. AWS well-architected framework helps cloud architects to build secure, highly performing and resilient efficient infrastructure for their applications. It is based on 5 pillars. As you see here, it is based on operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. So AWS has, we developed a framework where we give guidance and design principles by keeping all these 5 pillars in mind. And when a customer designs or a partner works with a customer, and then we design your cloud journey based on these 5 principles, they help you to achieve all these 5 categories, basically, where you are able to run your SAP workloads, which are highly resilient, and then adhere to the latest and greatest security that's out there in the market. So security is one of the key pillar in this. I want to emphasize on the security design principle. Since today we are focusing more on security, I want to emphasize here. Before I talk about security, I want to call it out, like if you are already a customer who is on AWS platform, you can leverage our well-architected framework for free of cost. You can engage the account solution architects or the partner that you are working and ask them about this AWS well-architected framework. It has like questionnaire that we work with you and understand your requirements and how you are doing today, and then how we can improve it. So if you're already on AWS, that's a great framework that you can leverage on. Coming back to the security design principles, it is very important that you understand your security requirements, and also you plan your architecture by keeping these security design principles in mind. So if you look at them, it is very important that you give access to the right audience at the right level. We call it as like least privileged access model. So what it means is like you give the required access to your audience. You do not give more, or you do not want to give less. You want to identify the right level. And AWS has many services, which I'm going to talk in my next slides. We empower you where you would be able to define or go to a granularity level where you can give access to the specific EC2 instance or the specific action that you want a user can perform. So that is the level of granularity you can dive deep into. And the second most important is like enable traceability. You definitely want to know what is going on, or who is accessing what type of resource within your VPC. VPC is your virtual private cloud, or you can consider it as a small, your own data center on AWS, which is a virtual unit where you create all your resources on AWS. So it is very important you define this traceability, and we do have AWS native tools which allows you to trace everything that is happening within your VPC. Apply security at all layers. I'm going to show you one of the examples how you can protect your infrastructure, including your compute, storage, and various other components. So the key message here is like you need to make sure you apply security at all layers, including like database layer, application layer, and who is accessing your application. So the more controls that you put in, the better your security posture is going to be. And automate the security best practices. So it is very important that you automate the auditing of your security logs or anyone that's using your resources. And what it means is like we provide you the automation framework where you create and define the alerts. If a user A is accessing what he's not supposed to, then you are automatically auditing and identifying who is gaining that type of access or who is attempting that type of access. Protect data in transit and at rest. We offer you KMS, key management services, which we are going to talk in depth in the next part of the presentation. We show you the native services that AWS offers, where you can encrypt your data both in transit and at rest. Keep people away from your data, so you give access to the right audience. You don't open it to all the users that doesn't need to access your data. And prepare for security events. It is very important that you prepare when you identify or when you detect a vulnerability. How are you going to act on it? And I'm going to talk more about the services that we have on AWS to help you with that. So here is a high level. Earlier I spoke about various design principles that you need to go around. Here is a snapshot of some of these services that you can use to orchestrate across security domains, like identify the threats, protect against threats, detect, automate, and audit the threats that you have identified. So as we were talking earlier, these are the native services that you can use to identify the threats, and we do have services to where you can automate when you identify a threat. So you can define an action on how you want to remediate those threats. Outside of these native services, there are partners that are developing security offerings on top of this. So you can always, if there is a specific service or there is a specific software that you want to use for your AWS, you can work with us, like you can work with AWS or our partner Novis, where we can go through your requirements and then try to identify that software on AWS Marketplace. If you already have licenses, you can bring them in, or we can work with you and then recommend you how you can address the security requirements that you have. This was the example that I was referring earlier. This is one of the best practices that I really want to give you a high level overview, like when you are planning any SAP workload or any non-SAP workload on AWS. So security applies to more than SAP application, right? So I want to emphasize the general, and as well as I'm going to dive deeper on what you can use for your SAP workloads as well. So when it comes to your VPC, it is a best practices that you create your network layers, right? And what it means is like, how are you going to access your VPC? Like you can use Amazon Route 53, which acts as your public URL where you expose this Amazon Route 53 to your end users. By doing that, you are protecting you are not directly providing this actual EC2 instance that's running your service, which is not recommended. So use our Amazon Route 53, which acts as a DNS, which is a DNS service as well. And you route all your traffic to Amazon Route 53. And from there, if you want to use CloudFront, you can use it. Or if you want to directly send it to WAF, which is Web Application Firewall, you can send all your traffic. So if you see there, you are adding those additional layers of security, and you can leverage distributed denial of service that we offer as part of, you can use AWS WAF to address those type of attacks as well. And when it comes to the VPC, we recommend you to put, if you want to leverage or use any application load balancer, you add that in public subnet. And then we recommend you to put your database or SAP applications in private subnet. And what it means is, like, by default, when you create a private subnets will not have access to the outside world. So it is a closed area, like a DMZ or demilitarized zone, where you don't have access to the external world. So people outside of your AWS network or outside of VPC cannot access your private network. On the public network, you use load balancers, or you can put SAP router or web dispatcher, depending on your use case. And then control traffic at all layers. So we have defined granular controls where you can choose or configure who can have access to your Route 53 URL, or who can access your load balancer. You have these great powerful tools or configurations where you can define. And I'm going to talk more about how you can control that. And then implement inspection and protection. So automate your auditing. You can use AWS Cloud Formation or AWS Systems Manager to automate this. I want to talk quickly about Amazon Virtual Private Cloud and its basic building blocks, and how you can leverage the basic or the standard controls that we provide you. Amazon VPC is a virtual private cloud where you actually choose or create your subnets and install your Amazon EC2, and then attach it to, and then you create your storage. All your resources are going to reside within a VPC. That's how you look at it. And within that VPC, you can create like public subnet and private subnet. So public subnet will have access from the internet, while private subnet is restricted within the VPC, right? And you get to choose the IP address range that you want to, that is the CIDR range. And then there are two main elements, which is called like security groups and network ACLs, which acts as firewalls, which I'm going to talk more in the next slide. So security groups, it acts as a firewall where it allows you to define who can have access to your Amazon EC2 instances. Think of it as a small table where you go and then put in like, hey, I want to enable access from source A on port number 3600. Like if you want to open access only to the message server, which is running on, instance number 00. That will be the only port that will be allowed from that source IP address. So this gives you a fine-grained control on who can access your Amazon EC2 instances. You can also choose a CIDR range as the source. So if you have a group, if you have a data center, and if you know what is the IP address range that's going to access your system, you can choose it accordingly. Similarly, NACLs, which is Network Access Control List, they can be used to allow the traffic or deny the traffic explicitly, just as a protection that you don't want unknown IP addresses to access your EC2 resources. Route tables, they allow you to define the set of rules, how you want to route them, and it gives you full control over it. Flow logs is a way how you can capture on who is accessing your VPC, and based on that you can define some automatic audit where you would be able to trigger alerts if an IP address from somewhere from a different region, if they are trying to reach out your resources, it can alert you. You can define those alerts. I want to quickly talk about three tools that are highly used by many SAP customers that I work every day. One is Amazon GuardDuty. Amazon GuardDuty is a threat detection service that uses machine learning for anomaly detection and integrated threat intelligence to identify and prioritize potential threats. So GuardDuty analyzes tens of billions of events across multiple AWS data sources, such as it gets the data from AWS CloudTrail event logs. So CloudTrail is a service, it's a native service on AWS where it keeps track of each and every API call that happened on within your AWS account. So it analyzes your AWS CloudTrail, it analyzes Amazon VPC flow logs and DNS logs, which are very important. That's how you are going to get any external connections to your Amazon resources. So GuardDuty leverages threat intelligence from various sources, like it takes it from AWS security intelligence that is internal, and we also work with AWS partners like CrowdStrike and Proofpoint. Customer can also customize their own threat intelligence, like if you have any requirement where you want to be able to define the rules, you should be able to do that. Amazon GuardDuty, it has a free trial of 30 days. Within that 30 days, I recommend you to try this and then see whether it fulfills your security requirements, and you can always work with AWS and Novis, and we are there to help you and then to walk you through your security journey as well. And the next service is like AWS Network Firewall, which is the firewall service, and it is a service that is offered by AWS. That's why it offers you a high resiliency with an SLA of 99.99. It automatically scales with the traffic, so you don't need to worry about adding additional resources to your firewall service. That is taken care by AWS. As a customer, you can define the firewall policy and rules, and you deploy. Once you deploy, you send all your traffic to the firewall endpoint, and that's all that you need to do if you are interested in this network firewall service. And it's a great service. I have seen many customers using it. It allows you ability to block the traffic that you don't want to be accessed by. You can filter the traffic that you want to filter from your Amazon VPC resources. AWS Security Hub. This is my last slide for today before I hand it over to Patricio from Novis. I want to quickly emphasize on this Security Hub service, which is a great way to centrally manage various security events and threats that are being identified within your AWS account. Security Hub is a centralized dashboard, and the main logic behind Security Hub and then why it was created is like to solve 4 main challenges that many organizations have been facing. One is you may have come across a situation like where there are more than one format for a security threat. For example, you may be using more than one security tool. So which means like you end up having multiple tools, multiple alerts. You really do not know which which alert that you need to focus on and resolving. And second is prioritization. So you really want to understand which security threat has high priority, like which needs to be addressed right away and which can be addressed at a later time. Visibility. When you have more than one tool, it's extremely difficult to understand that centralized view and then address them. And then compliance requirements. You may have compliance requirements that certain threats needs to be addressed in certain frame. So to address all these challenges, we came up with AWS Security Hub, which gathers information from various other services that we have. For example, as I'm showing here, it collects the data from GuardDuty, Amazon Macie, Amazon Inspector, IAM Access Analyzer, and then it provides you that centralized view, and then it gives you a rating on a scale of 100, how your security posture is. And it also tells you what are all the security threats that are identified, and it assigns a priority to them so that it is very easy for you to be on top of your security incidents, and you know which ones needs to be prioritized so that you can address them in a timely manner. That concludes my presentation today, and I want to thank you for the opportunity and hand it over to our partner from Novis, Patricio. Please walk us through the next part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Srina. So as I was saying in the introduction, Patricio is our Chief Technology Officer in Novis, and he's gonna tell us how Novis has been using these best practices and services that Srinath just told us.
Well,
Hi, Patricio.
Hi, my name is Patricio Renner. I'm glad you joined us today, and I want to share with you about our experience implementing SAP security best practices for our customers. I want to start telling you a little bit about Novis. Novis is a company that offers managed services for SAP applications. The company was founded in 2001, and we've been offering services for SAP system for 20 years right now. By 2015, we made a decision to get ready to offer services for SAP applications in the public cloud. And we started a project named SAP Cloud Initiative that lead us to do a lot of testing with the public cloud providers to test how SAP behaves and to define architecture to offer SAP services in the public cloud. By the beginning of 2016, we started offering real services for customers to run their SAP systems on AWS. We started with an S4 HANA system that was part of the development environment for a greenfield implementation. And by the end of 2016, we had 5 clients running on it with their SAP system on AWS. Then the next year, we learned and we improved our processes. We started building an agile culture in our teams. And we also started with a new initiative, the Digital Innovation Initiative, that has the goal to use cloud-native technologies to extend SAP functionality. We have done several projects integrating AWS analytics and AI capacities with the SAP data from our systems, from our client systems. And after 4 years of offering services, we got to the conclusion that we need to specialize more teams in exclusively in managing cloud operations. On the first year, we have a chair team that offers services for both on-prem and cloud services. But by the end of 2019, we split a team with our best engineers to focus exclusively on public cloud services. And that allowed us to fasten the pace of innovation. And because of that, we started building a software platform, Novis Cloud Manager, that helped us to automate SAP services on the public cloud. Novis Cloud Manager is a platform that packages a set of best practices from Amazon and SAP. It also has a library of validated architectures. Every time we plan how to deploy a specific SAP system or how to handle a specific client requirement, we design an architecture and we test it truly in our lab environment to make sure the performance is okay, the security is cared about, the resiliency is okay, and we provide them a set of provisioning script package in what we call the validated architecture. This set of validated architecture has embedded security, and that's what I'm going to talk about during this presentation. And everything is built with a modern software approach, following DevOps best practices and agile methodology. Novis Cloud Manager has 6 modules. The first one is about security, cybersecurity. I'm going to describe what we do in the following slide. Then we have a second model that the provisioning and architecture. This model helps us to manage the library of validated architectures and help us to provision an SAP landscape in hours in a completely automated process. Also, we have an operations model. It packages the functionality to monitor, to protect data, and to maintain SAP systems with a high level of automations. Next, we have a self-service and automation model. That model helps us to publish services on the SAP system that gives back the control of SAP to our clients. They can execute a lot of day-to-day tasks without depending on a third-party engineers to help them. We have services right now, for example, to automate transport order deployment, the scheduling of SAP system. Many of you might have heard a good use case of cloud is having development environments available only when people really is working on them. And for that reason, we have a scheduling model for SAP system, among others automated tasks. We have also a management model that has a set of dashboards and reports that help all customers to control cost, to optimize cost, to check the security posture, to check best practices on reliability and performance. And finally, we have the core application model that includes the user and authorization functionality, the front-end functionality, and the integration model that help us to integrate third-party technologies in our Novis Cloud Manager platform. Now, I'm going to deep dive on how we manage security using Novis Cloud Manager. And we have a security model that follows best practices that comes from ISO 27001, also for the Center for Internet Security Benchmark for AWS. We also consider the well-architected framework that Srinath described in the previous presentation. And the solution is split into two main components. The first one is the security baseline. In the security baseline, we automate the deployment of a series of best practices and security configuration that prepare a landing zone to deploy the SAP services. And then I'm going to talk on how we manage security for the SAP application itself. Beginning with the security baseline. At the core of the security baseline, there is a set of security policies based on ISO 27001. And on top of those security policies, we have a strong identity foundation. We have a single identity repository for all of our engineers. We enforce the usage of MFA for all critical accesses to our customer environment. We have set up a single sign-on portal that provides us a single point to access every services we need to support our cloud operations. The single sign-on, it's built using a temporary credentials solution that prevent us using permanent credentials that might become a risk for a platform. And also, we have the matrix that specifies specific permission sets depending on the role one of our engineers has and the kind of workload he's going to manage. And we have very fine-grained permission sets for each of these role workload records in the authorization matrix. Then we have the landing zone. The landing zone provides us a process to automatically set up security in an AWS account before the first system or the first configuration is deployed. As the part of our landing zone configuration process, we configure the authorizations to access an account. We enable the traceability of the security issues. We set up security logs. we protect security logs configurations, and we enable Amazon GuardDuty to automatically analyze the security logs on the account. We also delete default VPCs, preventing them to become a risk in the platform. We protect root AWS root user credentials, and we configure a lot of basic setup of accounts to be sure everything is configured before the account is introduced. After we do all this basic setup, automatically we enroll the account in AWS Control Tower. AWS Control Tower is a service that helps AWS customers to manage a multi-account environment. And one of the ways it adds value is by configuring guardrails that make controls on security best practices. As part of the guardrails we set up, we disallow actions as the root user, and we limit access to allowed regions, preventing the usage of AWS services in regions that are out of the scope of our customer project or service. Then we enroll new AWS account in our cloud management tool that help us having a lot of reports and dashboard to check security posture and to optimize cost and performance and environment. And we finally execute an assessment to check compliance with the Center for Internet Security benchmark for AWS under level 2. All this process is executed automatically by code, so we can avoid human mistakes, and we can execute all the security configuration in less than an hour, extremely quickly. And by the end, we execute an internal audit of the security controls established by a Center for Internet Security benchmark, and we check everything is correctly set up before start working with a new account. That was an overview on the process for our baseline security model. And now I'm going to talk to you about what we do to manage security for the SAP systems deployed on AWS. The first thing we need to do to protect an SAP system is to protect the base infrastructure service. We need to deploy a VPC, a virtual private cloud that contains all the network resources, and to protect it in several ways. The first thing we need to do is to privilege access to the VPC from known networks. We try to avoid the exposure to unknown network as much as we can in an assessment we do together with you. We define a strong perimeter security, delivering a fine-grained configuration for firewalls, security groups, and network ACLs. We also designed a multi-account concept depending on your requirements. We recommend segregation of different kind of workloads and environments into different AWS accounts to permit the segregation of duties and a more granular access to the resources. Then we store, protect, and deploy services to analyze network flow logs in order to have preventing and continuous monitoring on the network activity. The platforms and tools we use to manage our client systems are accessing the client environment using a zero trust authorization model that encrypts the connection panel using TLS protocol. And also we have an encrypted edge service that allows our engineers to connect to the systems we manage in a secure way. With this system, we can grant granular network access to specific resources. A traditional VPN usually gives you access to all the network, all the services, all the protocols, all the ports within one connection. And our SASE model helps us to grant access to specific services, specific ports, specific protocols to give complete control over the network accesses. And that platform has integration with the endpoint protection services that are checked before one of our engineers connect to the network. Then we need to concern on protecting your data. In order to do that, we have a data classification policy that specifies controls for each data category. We have some specific policies for databases, for binaries and configuration files, for your backups, and different data categories in the SAP environment. We worry to set up encryption for every byte that's going out to the VPC. And to do that, we set up encryption in Direct Connect and VPN connections. We try to carefully protect services exposed to internet using a secure protocols and a multi-layer approach to protect internet services. And we use a zero trust model for the accesses from Novis engineers and Novis management services to your resources running in AWS. And we also need to concern about encrypting your data. Encrypting your data, the EVS volumes that are the disk where your SAP system and database reside, also protecting the file shares on EFS and the buckets that store the backups. And we have a very detailed policy to manage encryption key, including rotation of key and a model of segregation of duties that split the roles to manage keys from the role to manage our client resources. After data protection, we need to worry on the security inside SAP. And we have two domains that are included in our services. The first one is security patching. We have a proprietary tool to get an automated inventory of SAP application components and to compare them automatically with the newest security notes from SAP. We gave our customers monthly report on security breach, and we defined together maintenance plans to keep system patch using tools to execute the patching processes. And also, we have another proprietary tool that's called Icaria that helps us to automate the re-engineering of roles in your SAP system. It's based on a matrix for risk and segregation of duties and help us to redesign your roles using a plugin that helps us to gather the data required, and it offers also capabilities to keep continuous compliance on your roles. Then we need to worry on how to publish services from SAP applications to open internet. And on the left side, the typical deployment for a SAP Fiori app, where you have the NetWeaver gateway service running on a secure network. And then you use SAP Web Dispatcher as an application proxy to publish Fiori services to internet. And you probably assign a public IP to the Web Dispatcher and filter the traffic, the incoming traffic, through a firewall to prevent security incidents on the platform. On the other hand, when we deploy an SAP Fiori app in AWS, we keep the SAP Security service on a secure network. We also keep the web dispatcher service in a secure network. We protect them behind a correct configuration for security group and network ACLs. And we use an application load balancer to add an extra layer of protection. And if you have a very sensitive service you want to protect, we put the load balancer behind CloudFront, behind a content delivery network, and we protect the incoming traffic to CloudFront with 2 layers of protection, AWS Shield, that help us to protect from DDoS attacks, and Web Application Firewall that can analyze the content of the packages, of incoming packages, to prevent all the security risk and threats. So we can offer a much robust security for web application running on AWS than the usual standard you have on-prem data center. Another important thing is to protect your backups. The first thing we do to protect backup is to store backups on separate AWS accounts than the accounts where the SAP workload is running. And the reason to do that is to be prepared to recover everything you have, even though your account is under attack and you cannot use it anymore for any reason. That's something we expect not to happen, because we made a lot of security configuration to protect your environment, but we have the backups stored in a secure vault where minimal permissions are granted to our administrator. No Novis engineer has permissions to delete your backup. Backups are managed using automated policies for lifecycle. And also, no one Novis engineer has permissions to download your backups. We want them to be completely protected. Of course, we have a configured encryption for those backups. We can design a protection customer configuring your requirement if you want to be protected from a complete availability zone failure, of if you need an extra protection to be protected against a region failure. And also we have a periodic backup testing process, backup recovery testing process. Then we have protection against threats and vulnerabilities, and we need to have a multi-layer protection model. We have protection in your SAP system. We configure them following SAP security recommendations, and we integrate an antivirus system to check every file that sits loaded in your SAP database. We also have a set of security configurations at server level that are checked continuously using the configuration management solution with AWS Ops Work Service. We have a very strict set of controls of the endpoints or engineers use to work with the environment, including a list of authorized software that can be used to access your SAP environment. We have a lot of automatic compliance checks that help us to keep the environment secure in the time. And finally, we have protection in the network level, because the network has posture checks that help us to check that an endpoint, a laptop from one Novis engineer complies with security requirements before grant them access to the network. That helps us to protect in every layer, preventing you from threats and vulnerabilities. And that was the overview of the services we deploy to protect your SAP services. Thank you. That was all of my presentation.
Thank you, Patricio. We have a few minutes left. Well, if anyone has a question, feel free to write it on the questions board, and we can check it. We can check it now. In the meantime, well, I have a question, Patricio. If a company is already on AWS, is there any kind of assessment that can be done to check how if there's any security improvements that can be done?
Yes, we can connect your AWS environment to management tools in order to have an automatic analysis on your security breaches and help you to design a process to improve security of your system in AWS.
Excellent, thank you. So, well, I think there's no other questions. We're very close also to the time to end the webinar. Well, as I was saying also, if you have any other questions after the webinar, I put my contact details here on the webinar, and you can feel free to write to me. Also, there's more information about this and about our services in noviscorp.com. And then, as I was saying in the introduction, we're gonna upload this webinar to our YouTube channel. So also in the next days, you should get a link on your email with the recording of the webinar. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, if you have any doubts or questions later, feel free to contact us.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.